Hey guys, welcome back to another match reaction and another positive one. Wow, ever since I started these, I don't think we've we've lost. But Slavia Praha 0, Arsenal 3, and yeah, let's start with the lineup. So the lineup was pretty good. I was quite. I'll be honest. I was surprised that Ethan started. That's the one that wasn't that's the one I was like, oh, okay, he's brought Ethan on today. I was like, okay, maybe a tide of change. Hincapie was coming on as left back, and apart from that, there was obviously yes, Mikel Merino as a like a like a half nine, so he was kind of dropping into the midfield and not and my thing is if we're gonna play Merino, I would much rather have him as a striker and dropping into the midfield. Definitely, he's more effective as that. And you kind of have to give Mikel credit because last season when he came on against Leicester, that's when you kind of started to see him playing as a striker. But yeah, apart from that, him as a midfielder, I've never really been convinced. But as a striker dropping in, he definitely we're gonna have to be honest, he definitely does look a lot more of a threat for us than Gyökeres, especially the fact that he's able to just play off these passes a lot better, and also he's easily can be used as a focal point in comparison to Gyökeres, who is kind of starting to find his feet a little bit, which is unfortunate with his injury. But he took his goal really well, Mikel, and the second one as well. To be fair, did know nothing about it. But let's just before we get into the goals, the first kind of 5-10 minutes is again when you're going to away to these grounds, especially when you're going to like Czech Republic, Serbia, all these kind of grounds. The crowd are always going to be the kind of main upmen for the team. They're definitely playing a lot more on the crowd, and the crowd was heavily relying on them to kind of get them through games. And you kind of started to see that, especially because in the first 10 minutes we were struggling to gain any form of rhythm. Our passes loose every time we trying to go long. They were kind of cancelling it out. And you know, the first 10 minutes I was looking at it thinking, wow, this is okay. This is going to be a different kind of challenge for us. You know, we know, you know, player for player we're better than them, but when you're going to these grounds, especially, it's not about player for player. And maybe it is, but their equalizer tends to be their crowd, and their crowd was loud. And for us, it kind of seemed like it kind of disrupted the rhythm a little bit. But the starting 11 was a bit of a makeshift-ish. Norgard coming in instead of Zubabendi, which obviously was for the suspension. I was surprised Ethan came on. Not came on. I'm surprised he started Ethan. That's the one I was like, okay, maybe he's trying to see something here. And who else? Obviously, we said Mikel. Hincapie came on into the 11. Yeah, to be fair, there's not really much to report, and he looks like a very defensively sound left back, and that's just the much I can say. Going forward, I'm not really seeing much from him, but as a defensive option, it's definitely an option now with Ricardo as well. But who else? Yeah, but yeah, the performance we kind of started to kind of build a bit of momentum, and then you know, kind of 15 to 30 minutes of that game, when the first half, definitely we started to look a lot more comfortable. We started to kind of create more chances, and that's where that penalty came from. And one thing I've definitely realized, especially watching a lot of the European games, is that these referees are strict. They are, in terms of what they perceive as a penalty, is a very grey. That the grey area that we have in the Premier League, for them it's like nope. It's anytime that ball touches your hand, you better pray that it doesn't look deliberate, because they just give it. Even because that penalty, I looked at it and I was thinking, you know what? It touches his hand, but it's like he's trying to play the ball. So I was slightly like, oh, they gave that. I was like, okay, cool. it kind of disrupted the momentum a little bit. We scored that and just completely shut them off, and we started to kind of play a little bit more. I definitely want to touch on Ethan. I think it's weird because he started today, but I feel like the game bypassed him a lot. And the reason why I think this is because he's not getting on the ball. And when this happens, you kind of have to search for that ball. And this is the difference between a top player and a very average player, is being able to understand, okay, the game is kind of drifting away from me. Now I need to go make something out of nothing. And it's very similar to how Odegaard kind of plays. When Odegaard is oozing, Odegaard looks for the ball. He drops deep and he tries to get on the ball and he tries to kind of play his game. Maybe that's because Odegaard is given that little bit of freedom in comparison to Ethan, and maybe that's the difference. Because when I was watching that the first and second half, especially when the camera pans out, you can see Mikel shouting at him. Like, obviously I can't pick up what he's saying, but I'm not sure, how much more involvement Mikel needs to do. I think maybe the kid feels a little bit of pressure, especially when you have someone shouting down at you, especially when he's that close to you on the pitch. It can be quite uncomfortable for a player. But yeah, it definitely looked like the game was kind of moving away from him a little bit, and he kind of struggled to gain rhythm within the game. And maybe that's the lack of gameplay that he gets, so he doesn't have that much of an opportunity to play his game. But yeah, definitely a quiet game for him, and maybe he might not see another start for a while. But for him, he definitely should. Definitely should see him a lot more. Now, even with that Sunderland game coming up on the weekend, that's probably a game where you should probably start to think of bringing in Ethan on that game as well. And yeah, I just thought he had a very quiet game. But apart from that, Trossard is weird. And Trossard's another one because it's like he played well today, and I always say this with Trossard. Trossard goes through these spells at Arsenal where he reminds you of his quality, and then for large parts of the season again, it's like he kind of drops off a little bit, and he's kind of reached that point now where he's playing really, really well. Like every time he gets on the ball, he looks very effective, and I thought he looked more of a brighter spark in our attack. And I thought our attack actually played really well today. I don't think they put a foot wrong. I thought Saka had some great opportunities. He beat his man a few times. Like with Saka, he's always strong on the ball when he receives it. So every time he gets on the ball, he's secure in terms of how he receives it. But obviously, when you have someone like Saka there, that's where you want Ethan to kind of just start to kind of drop into that space, kind of follow Saka, but also peel away from Saka. So kind of give Saka that give and go that he does really well with Odegaard. But I felt like he didn't really get as much now. So every time when Saka gets on the ball and he cuts in, that give and go to a player is a bit further away. Whereas where you see him when he has someone like Martin, when Saka, the immediate opportunity where Saka cuts inside, Odegaard is within 2 or 3 yards away from him and is ready to receive that pass, and then Saka drifts away and then gets that pass back. But I feel like those times when the attack broke down a lot more when Saka received the ball, because when he comes in, Ethan isn't there, he's on the other side, and then Rice is God knows where to be seen. So it's like the midfield kind of looked a bit congested in the sense that whenever our main player Saka gets on the ball, he's not able to pop that off again. And he'd done it a few times, but for the majority of the time, he was given the ball away because Saka plays well when he has a layoff to play. He's not a player that can just beat 3-4 man and then just whip one in. He needs that 1-2 to then lay off and then create another outlay. But Marino playing up top helps though, in fairness, because Marino is able to hold the ball a lot better and is able to be an anchor for us. So every time there's a few opportunities where Marino received the ball, although he turns like a lorry, in Champions League games he does it well. He receives the ball, he turns, and then plays it off to Saka. Gyökeres hasn't really got that yet, but our attack looked a lot better today in terms of creating opportunities, and I'm glad we scored from open play. So maybe that gives players a lot more confidence, and obviously scoring immediately in that second half just kills the game immediately. That just completely shuts off any possible comeback. And I'm glad they didn't give that penalty, because I was looking at that and I was thinking, really, I was trying to see where the issue was. And the referees in this game in Europe are strict. And I said this at the start, they are very, very strict in terms of they don't let bullshit walk. And you know, I was even thinking that Gabriel chance, that Gabriel thing against Newcastle where Walter Marde or whoever the Newcastle player was stroked the ball and his hand was like here. That in the Champions League, I was thinking that they're 100% giving that. But nonetheless, it was a great performance. It was a good performance. Obviously, a few players came on in the second half. Miles Lewis-Kelly, I keep telling you, like, Lewis-Kelly for me needs to start in that left-back position, especially if we're looking to impose ourselves a lot more. You just see every time he gets the ball, he just looks a lot more decisive. It's almost like, to me, the difference between Skelly, Calafiori and Hincapié is that Skelly just knows what to do whenever he gets that ball. His immediate thought is, I'm taking this ball forward. And with Calafiori and Hincapié, it's not necessarily that. For them, they're more of a out-and-out left-back, or they can be, and they prefer to drift outer instead of drifting inside. And he definitely offers you something completely different, and a positive difference as well. Whether or not we see him a lot, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think this manager would play him as much because it compromises our defensive stability. So Skelly was just going to be one of those guys who just comes off the bench unless he drifts him onto the midfield. But apart from that, our performance wasn't too bad. And on to the next one. We've got Bayern Munich, I think, after the international. So that's going to be a very interesting one and a very challenging one for Arsenal as well. So it'll be good to see how we deal with those. And another clean sheet as well. So yeah, another thing I was going to say, Raya's got this Aaron Ramsdale about him. Not in the sense of like as a ability as a goalkeeper, but in the sense that, you know, when Ramsdale hasn't got much to do, especially when he was at Arsenal, when he hasn't got much to do, he pulls off these bullshit scenarios where you're thinking, how are you even there? Like, there was a bit where he took one touch and then another touch, and then he tried to obviously clear the ball, and then the player managed to obviously block it, but luckily he managed to recover the ball. But there's times when Raya he just zones out a little bit, and it's scaring me a little bit because it's like, for large parts of games this season, we're going to be obviously in the front foot. And that time when you need your keeper to be focused, is he going to be focused? Because at this moment in time, he just looks like he's in a different universe sometimes. But anyway, great performance. On to Sunderland. That's going to be a tough game, sense-ish. Xhaka, playing against Xhaka. I watched Sunderland yesterday. In front of goal, they're not that great. And they're very similar to a lot of teams, especially who come up heavily reliant on the crowd to kind of give them that kind of 11th man. But we should deal with them with ease. I don't see much issue with Sunderland. But yeah. Anyways, great performance, guys, from us. On to the next one, top of the Champions League group. I'll be watching that Liverpool Real Madrid game. But yeah, I'll see you guys on Saturday for the reaction for Sunderland.